I'm a law professor. I can call on people, but I won't do that.
I have a question. So out of the books that you read, are there any like quotes or something that stuck out to you, like even now, that have made you change like your perception of reality or the history that the books focus on?
Yes, such a great question. And quotes are so important. There are a lot. One, though, I use as the part of the dedication. The book is dedicated to my dad. He died at the age of 95, just as I was finishing the book. He was a great hypnotherapist. He was a psychiatrist who specializes in medical hypnosis. And he worked with this great hypnotherapist in the 20th century and wrote a book about the power of the mind to change reality. And he had a quote from Paracelsus, who was a 16th century mystic, who said, "As we imagine ourselves to be, so shall we be, and we are what we imagine." Just think about that for a sec. That's a very empowering quote. Now, he would say that a lot when I was growing up, but I didn't quite connect it to this really empowering lesson of the wisdom, which is that first, if you've got, your thoughts shape your reality. You've got these unproductive thoughts like that anger or the distractions or the envy, and your mind is racing forward or racing back. You can center it. You can substitute the unproductive thoughts for productive one and change your reality. Dad had a way of getting rid of anxiety, and he would say, he'd put you in a hypnotic trance. A hypnotic trance, I just talk to you for a bit and you wanted to go into a trance, because you won't if you won't. We could do that. But basically it's just really being focused, so you're open to my suggestions. He would say, you've got anxiety, imagine that anxiety like a red liquid, and then imagine it seeping through your body and going through to the chair that you're sitting on, and then get up out of the chair and walk away and leave it behind. And that's like a really good way of getting rid of your anxiety. So you concretize it, you make it concrete, and then you switch it. You switch the image to something else. You can let it out of your body, or you can switch the red liquid to a peaceful blue liquid, or and feel that sense of peace. So thoughts are incredibly powerful, and that also connects to so many other great quotes in the book and in the wisdom literature, and in particular, the Dhammapada, the Buddhist wisdom, says we are what we think, life shaped by the mind. And then the Bhagavad Gita sums up the wisdom as renounce and enjoy. That's what Gandhi got. So remember that one. You're renouncing all those unproductive thoughts or any attachment to external results, any attempt to control other people's reaction to you or what's going to happen, because you can't. And if you renounce that attachment, then you enjoy infinite eternal freedom and immortality. And it's true. I mean, it is. If you think about it, it's extremely hard to do, but you can do it. So those are just some of the quotes. And in that sense, for me, this literature was life-changing, but it's not like there's one book I say you got to read Cicero or read Epictetus. For me, the vibe of the books was more important than the actual details, because they got different accounts of the balance between reason and passion, and whether conscience can kind of help you or not. Those are just ultimately hair-splitting. It's far less important than the basic path, which is just keep that equanimity, keep productive so you can achieve that self-mastery. Thank you.
Were there any books that you didn't necessarily agree with the ideas in them, but they were still important to like your educational career?
Definitely. So many. Well, all those Puritan books, you can tell because I'm still talking about them, I really didn't agree with the ideas. The main idea that I found so challenging was that salvation could only be randomly given grace and faith, and nothing that you did for your individual efforts could actually affect that. Good works, the Puritans said, could be a sign of predestination. So it was good, bless you, it was good to be good, because that might be a reassuring sign that God had already predestined you in birth for salvation, but if he changed his mind, that couldn't help you, and that didn't do it for me. Plus, I'm Jewish. But it was very powerful because it introduced me to that idea that you're supposed to try to be perfect regardless of whether or not there's any payoff. So so there's all that. And then I teach constitutional law at the National Constitution Center. I live and breathe the Constitution and spend a lot of time on the methodologies of constitutional interpretation, originalism versus textualism and stuff like that. And the podcast I host brings together liberals and conservatives to debate constitutional issues. Many of these methodological debates I find not always persuaded, or I find some methodologies more convincing than others, but it's just the exercise of getting your mind around them is really helpful. And then also the discipline, trying to be able to give both sides. So for all these books, even when you really disagree with, if you can state the argument on the other side, that habit is really empowering too, and is part of this kind of deliberation that is part of the path of pursuit of happiness, because it's all about opening your mind. It's about being willing possibly to change it. When we do our debates and podcasts, I sometimes ask people before and after whether they've changed their mind based on the discussion, and few people actually change their minds. These are debates about the constitutionality of abortion or gun rights or all the stuff people really disagree about, and people don't often change their minds, but usually people's mind is open to the argument on the other side. And President Allen said last night, I struck that example, the conversation with Jeff Goldberg that's the modeling that kind of civil discourse is itself the path and the learning. You're spending an hour, I know you have to be here, but I hope it's not too painful, and we're learning and talking together and having this conversation, and maybe it'll open your mind to some stuff, and that's what growing involves, and that's what learning involves. And it's so important to keep an open mind. And not everyone has the privilege of doing it later in life. And sometimes people get calcified and they retreat into their camps and their foxholes, and they know what they know, and they're just not going to be open to anything else. And that's our political culture of Fox News versus CNN and stuff like that. Don't do that. It's just so unsatisfying, because it is the opposite of learning. The more you open your mind, you realize the less you know. I mean, in a meaningful sense, I feel like I don't know anything important about, well, anything, but about this moral philosophy. I mean, I spent a year reading it, but it's just scratching the surface of all these other books and traditions that would look at things in a different way. Or for the Constitution, I can't really have an informed opinion about any hard topic that hasn't been dealt with before, unless I hear the arguments on all sides. And I spent the beginning of my career as an opinion journalist and spent 20 years telling people my opinions. And it was all kind of, here's what I think, and here's why I'm right, and the Supreme Court is wrong, and if only people thought like me, then I've lost interest in my own opinions. Really, who cares what I think, including me? I can kind of get in a lather and say what I think about a particular case, but the complexities are so much more interesting than the certainties. And the spirit of liberty is the spirit that's not too sure it is right, said Judge Learned Hand. A really profound, we were trying to figure out how to live humility and stuff like that. You just realize we don't know anything really, but we can be deeper learners. You can't really know anything deeply enough to presume to teach it unless you're learning along. Leonard Bernstein, great composer, there's a new biopic about him, the greatest musical educator, as well as one of the great composers of the 20th century, noted that in German, the word lernen is the same word to learn and to teach. And he couldn't teach any music until he was learning it in real time, and I kind of feel the same way about the Constitution. So just kind of joining that community of lifelong learning and doing it with humility and a spirit of gratitude and wonder. The only thing that chokes me up every time I think about it is just how incredibly lucky we are to live in this age when all the books are available online. You think of the internet as this terrible distraction, and it's responsible for so many of our problems. But when I was a kid, I went with my mom to the Thomas Jefferson Building, the Library of Congress in DC. I think it's the most beautiful building in DC. If you go, it's just the glorious temple to books. I'm with my mom and thinking, just filled with wonder at the thought that all the books in the world are in this place. It just seems so marvelous. Well, now we carry them around on our iPhone. And it just blows my mind that I can write this whole book and spend a year reading, just lying on my couch, reading free copies of Cicero or the actual copies of the books the founders read. It's just extraordinary. Think of how much in the old days people had to fight to have access to books, or John Adams is so excited that, he can get a translation of Priestley. It's just waiting for us. All we need is the self-discipline to do it. And it's like we're kind of not only missing an opportunity, but violating some responsibility not to improve ourselves when it's so easy to do it, when it's all in our power, every little bit of it. So that's why I am kind of I can't be optimistic about politics. I don't know what's going to happen about politics. Politics can turn on a dime or a few votes or one leader or someone getting sick or a wisp or a breath. I mean, it's just extremely precarious. And fate has a great hand in our destinies, of course. But regardless of what happens with politics, we've got all this reading to do. And it's wonderful. How lucky we are to live in this age when all these books and all this great music and just great art and is just waiting for us to learn from it.
So I know we were talking about how I think it was but there was a lot of hypocritical ideas and practices being brought on in the earlier times with slavery, but then also they want their own freedom and they were able to acknowledge how hypocritical they were being with their own point of view. That made them better leaders and better overall people to be able to address their own faults, but to be able to pretty much take care of more people than they can enslave at that time.
Yes, I mean, I think it made some of them better people, the ones who were able to live their ideals. Like Ben Franklin starts off having an enslaved person in his house, and he changed his mind. He freed Peter, was his name, and he became the head of the Pennsylvania Abolitionist Society. He really grew. George Wythe was Thomas Jefferson's law teacher. He freed his whole enslaved population in his lifetime and became a really fierce opponent. Jefferson didn't. But at least, there was a degree of moral seriousness even in grappling with it. It's not like they were indifferent to it. That changes leading up to the Civil War. And there, for the first time, you begin to have Southern defenders of slavery denying the Declaration of Independence, saying that slavery was good for black people, denying that it was a violation of the rights of all people, just these grotesque justifications. And that was kind of wicked, it was really, really immoral to defend it. But the founder guys generally didn't. And I think that was because they just felt compelled to try to be perfect, to try to live up to it. And to the degree that they didn't, on some level, they were aware of it. I don't want to delight you.
No,
too
Jeff,
long, but-
it's fine.
Oh, yes, no, I think I have indeed.
Okay. I'd like to thank you very much for your time. And I said on the way over that listening to the podcasts and town halls and your lectures are always kind of making my head hurt. It's because it puts it through an exercise of how much I don't know, how much I still need to learn, and how much I still need to read. So on behalf of our students and our faculty, thank you very much for coming. Are you going to be remaining around to talk with the students, or are you headed out right away?
Stay just a moment. I'd love to say hi, and then I can stay for a moment, so I'd love to say hi.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for coming. President Allen, any final comments?
Thank you all. Thanks for listening.